So this week, a trove of internal Microsoft documents were accidentally released as part of Microsoft's battle with the FTC. Now, if you're not familiar, Microsoft is trying to acquire Activision Blizzard, and the FTC, or the Federal Trade Commission in the United States, is attempting to block that acquisition. They've taken Microsoft to court over this, and because of that, Microsoft has submitted a bunch of documents trying to prove that they're not attempting to become a gaming monopoly. But what happened here is very interesting, because it seems like a Microsoft employee uploaded a whole bunch of files to a federal court's website last week, and some people in the gaming press found out about it. Now, the uploaded files somehow accidentally included schedules, internal communications, design files, and a whole lot more. So I have looked through these files, and it seems like there's a ton of stuff that gives us insight into how Microsoft work. So here are 6 things that I think we need to talk about with this massive Xbox leak. But before we move on, I want to thank Micro Center for sponsoring this video. Micro Center is one of the largest consumer electronics retailers in the US. With over 30,000 products in stock, there's something for everyone. Students, IT managers, and gamers alike all trust Micro Center for their computer and electronic needs. Micro Center is featuring a new customer exclusive. It's $25 off your purchase of $100 or more. If I were you, I would spend it on a 3D printer. Mine got pretty banged up when I moved house last year, and it's been on the fritz ever since. So having a new 3D printer would be nice. And speaking of, Micro Center has everything the maker in you needs. Whether you're just starting out with making as a hobby, or you're an enthusiast with a ton of experience building things, you can find 3D printers, filaments, hand tools, Arduinos, breadboards, ICs, and so much more. Plus, they're offering free shipping on all inland filaments. After opening their first store in 8 years, Micro Center is already opening another one. This location will be in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's going to feature some of Micro Center's craziest deals. Anyone who visits in person when the store opens gets a free 128GB flash drive just for signing up at the link in the description. The store is opening in early 2024, and I couldn't be more excited for them. Make sure you use my links below so they know I sent you, and thank you to Micro Center for sponsoring this video. Now back to it. Alright, number 1. Since Xbox has introduced its brand to the gaming public, Microsoft has been committed to the namesake. And at least from a design perspective, Microsoft has really lived up to the name here. But the Series X refresh, codenamed Brooklin, is ditching the box. Now, Brooklin appears to be cylindrical, or perhaps a cylindrical oval, and I've seen the current Series X in person. To me, the Series X looks like a stable, if a bit oversized, conversation piece that sits under your TV in the living room. But this new cylindrical Brooklin design just looks unstable to me. It looks like you could walk up to it and just push it and knock it over, or maybe breathe on it wrong. Maybe it's just the rendering here, but it looks like it could fall forward or backward and then roll right off the shelf. It's too tall, and it doesn't have a wide enough base, in my opinion. It also seems like this is not going to be as versatile as the current design. You can't lay this down or anything, and I think that's kind of lame. Besides that, though, the Xbox brand has the word box in it. Now, boxes can be many different shapes, but a cylinder isn't a box. You know, this is a box, right? It's a square, cube. This is a box. This is a box. Heck, even this is a box. This isn't. Sorry, Microsoft, this ain't a box. And I wouldn't call this a box either. So maybe it would be unwise for me to die on this hill, but I am absolutely going to, because this doesn't feel right to me. It's not a box. Now, the next thing I want to bring up is that Brooklin does not have a disk drive like the current Series X design does. Now, this is yet another step towards the technocratic feudalism that Microsoft has been pushing since the original Xbox One, where you wouldn't be able to share or resell your games. Now, Brooklyn's introduction here, missing a disk drive, really brings up some important questions. What will happen to the physical collection of Xbox Series games that current Series X owners have amassed? And what will happen to the physical inventory of Xbox Series games at retail? I mean, on this slide itself, Microsoft is talking about their sustainability efforts, and yet they've gone and manufactured what is essentially e-waste after this rolls out. What do they plan to do with this? Now, Microsoft has been slowly warming the waters in partnership with PlayStation to get folks accustomed to the idea of no more physical media since at least last generation. But the question is, why? Well, it's because, much like we've discussed in my last video, Console gamers are a captive audience. It used to be that you could buy a game and play it right off the disc. You didn't need to patch it. You didn't need day one title updates. You just put the disc in the machine and it played. The slow enshittification of Xbox and even PlayStation consoles, though, it's been a deliberate means of extracting more profit from console consumers and providing them with a worse experience for their trouble. Some will argue that abandoning the slow physical media for SSD-based games will save everyone time, since disc-based games need to be installed before they can be played and loading times are annoying. But I have to ask those people, what do you think enshittification actually means? It's not just that Microsoft wants to sell you copies of games at full retail price, or that they don't want someone else to be able to buy a copy of a game on the secondary market. It's that they want you to see that the elimination of your right to choose, i.e. buying a brand new copy of a game or buying it on the secondhand market, they want you to see that elimination of choice as a good thing. They have intentionally made their disk drives slower and worse, the experience of playing a game from a disk as inconvenient as possible, in order to convince you that your right is something you should willingly give up in exchange for subjugation to their techno-feudalism. That's what enshittification means. Now, I've been a bit critical of Microsoft. I like doing that. It's something that I've done for the history of this entire channel. But I also want to be a little positive here. I am a controller nerd, if you guys didn't know this, and along with the refreshed Brooklin Series X, there is a mid-generation controller refresh also on its way. And this is really interesting here, where I've been particularly critical of most of the details coming out of this leak. I've got to admit that this new controller is intriguing to me. First, I've got to commend the striking two-tone design here. It looks great, and it's kind of reminiscent of the iconic neo-fascist Stormtrooper design. You gotta love it. Next, the controller includes an accelerometer. Now, this is in order to just be able to pick up the controller and it have itself turn on. Accelerometers in an Xbox controller, that's the first of its kind as far as I'm aware. Now, this could be some great news if Microsoft is saying accelerometer to mean also including a gyroscope. That would be great, because a new controller without gyros is dead on arrival as far as I'm concerned. But there is no specific mention of gyros here, so it might still be DOA in as far as any use case that I have. Now, importantly, this controller is even more repairable, and this is huge. The thumbsticks here are modular, meaning that they are more replaceable than previous iterations. This leaked graphic says that it has a rechargeable and swappable battery, and there has been special attention paid to disassembly and repairability. If this is to be believed, that's pretty good news. I'd like to try this new controller, as the recent Xbox controllers have been non-starters for me since they don't have gyro controls. Again, we don't know if this actually has gyro, so we'll see when it actually gets released. Another interesting feature is that this controller will apparently be able to connect directly to the cloud. Microsoft is literally tearing a page right out of Google Stadia's playbook here, as their controller did this as well. Essentially, each controller will be able to connect directly to a Wi-Fi network and communicate with the Xbox Cloud service. And this is important as it cuts out the middleman of your Xbox or other streaming device having to receive the signal from your controller and then relay it to the cloud. That introduces lag and delay. I'll never use this feature, as I find the idea of cloud gaming morally repugnant, but it is interesting to see nonetheless. All right, towards the beginning of this document, we see a small icon for an Xbox handheld. Earlier this summer, we saw a leak of something similar. There were rumors swirling that Microsoft was going to try and compete with the Switch and Steam Deck, and that an Xbox handheld might be on its way. But I didn't really buy into that idea because, well, to be quite honest, Phil Spencer seems like the kind of core gamer dipshit that I figure looks down on handhelds, and I really doubt that he'd ever approve something like that. So it was kind of a shock for me to see this when I was scrolling through this document. Now, the Xbox Gaming Beyond slide includes a handheld design that I don't think we've ever seen before. And if you compare this slide to previous ones in this document, there's a growing number of devices. So what does this mean? Does this mean that we will see a first-party Xbox handheld sometime soon? Well, I don't know, because if you scroll down just a few pages to current gaps in fiscal year 23 to reach 2030 goals, we're treated to the Xbox Tower of Power here, or you might be inclined to call it the Xbox Pyramid Scheme. Notably, if we look at the very top of the pyramid scheme, we will see a section marked not in scope for first party, and it includes earbuds, media remotes, mobile controller, and handheld. So is the handheld mentioned on the Beyond slide just mentioning that Xbox Game Pass is available on certain handheld PCs? I don't know. And if that's the case, then how come all the first-party Xbox devices are actual pictures while third-party devices are line art? Only time will tell here. But my speculation is that Microsoft might provide a Windows for ARM build that gives access to Xbox Cloud Gaming or something like that. So it might be more of a Logitech G Cloud situation where third parties will be able to make Xbox branded ARM devices. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic specifically. All right, next up, it's been clear to me for a while that Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, is not really how do I put this nicely? He's not really a deep thinker. He's like the kind of high school football player who really can't even comprehend the rules of football, but you point him towards the end zone, you hand him the ball and tell him to run, and he just does it. And we now have some evidence in the form of internal emails at Microsoft that show just how little this guy understands about the gaming public. For example, we have the full unredacted email that Phil sent to his Xbox team the day the PlayStation 5 was announced. He said, quote, "We have a better product than Sony does. Not just on hardware, but equally important on the software platform and services on top of that hardware. We have the ingredients of a winning plan. Today was a good day for us. We haven't won anything, but we can take confidence in our product and truth here. This was a good day for Xbox." Now, I know hindsight is 2020, but my Lanta, that didn't age well. Microsoft is still in a pretty poor position in terms of console sales, especially against the PlayStation 5. I mean, Sony is like smoking Microsoft at this point. Not only that, but the follow-up email in this chain was comparing the Series X to the PlayStation 5 specs, despite the fact that everybody on the Xbox team knew that the Series S was the real product offering at launch, with only a limited number of Series X console being available for customers to purchase. Couple all of this with the fact that Phil doesn't believe having good games does anything for the Xbox brand, and I feel I've painted a pretty clear picture here.
And I see it out there. I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift in some dramatic way.
I think most terrifying of all, though, with this leak is how Microsoft wants to own everything. Now, we could infer from the spending spree that Xbox has been on acquiring studios, whose subsequent output, by the way, has been suspiciously lacking. But the fact that Xbox head Phil Spencer wants to acquire even more, it should be a cautionary tale for everyone, especially now that we know just how grandiose their ambitions are written out here in black and white. Now, in this leak, Phil Spencer is talking to Chris Coppola and Takeshi Numoto, and he's been describing Microsoft's dastardly plan to force Nintendo into accepting a buyout proposal from them. What would this look like? How would it work? Let's look at the text. Essentially, Microsoft has tight connections with another company, ValueAct, who has been acquiring shares of Nintendo, as well as Mason Morfit, who has also been doing the same. What this boils down to is that when a company is publicly traded, that company is beholden to delivering on the demands of their shareholders. As Phil laid out in the leaked email, quote, "Our former Microsoft Board of Directors member, ValueAct, has been heavily acquiring shares of Nintendo, and I've kept in contact with Mason Morfit, as he's been doing the same. It's likely he will be pushing for more growth and appreciation from Nintendo stock, which could create opportunities for us." If you've heard the term hostile takeover, it's a similar idea. A publicly traded company has a hostile entity buy a majority of the company's shares and then starts making demands of that company that they simply can't meet. Then the hostile entity offers to buy out the company completely as an alternative to their unattainable demands. But Spencer's plan here is to use outside investors who are loyal to him in order to give them an inroad. He even mentions that a mutually agreeable merger of Nintendo is preferable, and he says, "I don't think a hostile action would be a good move, so we're playing the long game." Regulators take note, Xbox will not be satisfied until they own every brand in gaming. They want nothing short of a monopoly, and they should not be allowed to acquire Activision. Phil has kept Microsoft's board of directors in the loop on this plan as well, because apparently Team Xbox has a full write-up on a potential acquisition of Nintendo as well as Valve. Yeah, you heard that right. You knew this was coming, right? I mean, Xbox wants to buy Valve. Of course they do. Thankfully, Valve is a private company, and that means that they don't have stocks that can be bought out by Spencer's moles and cronies. And Valve is an exceptionally profitable company, so I don't really expect Gabe Newell to be interested in selling out to Microsoft anytime soon, especially given how hostile Valve has been towards Microsoft in the past. But I mean, this leak has been wild for me to comb through. It's been really interesting and full of like little nuggets of terrifying and interesting things. I'd love to know what you think about any of this. Leave me a comment below. This is like fascinating stuff. So if you enjoyed this video, you know what you can do. You can like that smash button so you can stay up to date with all the news and updates that we've got going on here on the channel. You can also subscribe to see more videos just like this. I think that's going to do it for now though. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.